They sold 12-inch Dick Tracy dolls in the Studios park. And there was like a set of 6 of them, and they were like $30 a piece. These things were not cheap. I have all of them. I bought everything I could Dick Tracy. I was obsessed with that movie, obsessed with the show. Still, like, my biggest regret or miss in Imagineering history is not getting the Dick Tracy Crime Stoppers attraction that was on the books.
Yeah.
And it's great that they didn't do any of this stuff, because it would have lasted literally like a year, and then they would have been like, how do we replace this? So there's a part of me that hates everybody for not seeing that movie and making this the massive franchise that it deserved to be. This is one of those things that is just like, who designed this? Who put this together? Who designed those characters? I would love to have been in that Imagineering room when this was being pitched and they just showed everything, and then for Eisner to go, that's it. Let's do it. Let's go. So
I'm sold. We've got a winner.
Let's do it.
That is Skipper Ben Rebstock, who is back to talk about the second era of the Disney MGM Studios. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Hey there, thanks for joining me here on episode 196 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. Today's focus is the Disney MGM Studios, and I think that Skipper Ben is the perfect guest to talk about it. He's been on a few times, including the last time where we talked about all the opening day attractions at the Disney MGM Studios. This time we are extending it to the time after that, where the park had to grow really quickly because they realized that the initial idea of a half-day park didn't work because people wanted to stay all day. So we're going to dive into some big attractions that you know well, like Star Tours or Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and then others involving Dick Tracy, like you heard in the intro. The Muppets had several live shows. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids set adventure, plenty more. And Ben, having worked at Muppet Vision 3D and then also just being such a fan of the park due to his interest in movies, knows a lot about the history of the park and also went to the park a lot during this time, as I did, that I still don't know if I can rank on that level. Before we do that, though, Ben is also going to talk about his trip to California recently over spring break, where he went to Disneyland and saw Avengers Campus, and he went to Universal Studios Hollywood and got the chance to visit Super Nintendo World. So we're going to start with that and then dive into the studios. So much to cover, so let's get right to it. Here is Skipper Ben Rebstock. So Ben, I know you recently had the chance to ride the Mario Kart attraction, and I remember you were very underwhelmed by the YouTube video. So here is my big question to start with. Was your original impression accurate? It was okay. Or did it blow you away? Was the internet videos wrong?
The internet videos, in my opinion, based on my first comments, were spot on. I wanted to love this thing so much. I really did. But all of my fears came to fruition. From what I saw that they actually delivered, and then also thinking back on what we had hoped it had been, and then trying to figure out why they went with what they did and where they went wrong. And I know there are people out there that love this attraction, but I'm a party of 4. Myself, my wife, who's never played video games in her life, so she had no attachment. This was her going in, just dry, no love for Mario, no nothing. And then I have an 11 and a 14-year-old daughters who are not big gamers either, but they know Mario. They know the characters. They and like the one game that they have played in their life is Mario Kart. So we all rode this thing and we all got off with dramatically underwhelmed with what we just experienced. And it's not that the attraction's bad. Like the queue for it is amazing. The set design inside the attraction is amazing. all of that stuff is really cool, but the augmented reality just to me did not work. And I'm a gamer. I'm somebody who's played games my entire life. I had an NES when I was like 4 years old. My parents, anytime a new system came out, I had it. So the newest, latest technology, had everything. I had the Power Glove. I had Virtual Boy. I had all that crap. So I feel like I'm somebody who can take on an augmented reality experience, a VR type experience. And even I got off this thing going, what did I just do? It doesn't blend, to me, did not blend well. And the gameplay itself was confusing. One thing that everybody talks about is in the pre-shows, how there's no words spoken. It's all through animations, which helps take down the language barrier for people who don't understand. But this one, I feel like maybe needed some language in there to tell you, hey, you need to hit the boxes to get the shells, and you push these buttons to hit the shells. You need to turn your head. You need to turn the. I wanted to love it, Dan, and it just did not work for me at all.
Well, that's interesting. I'm going to be going in a few months, and I promise I didn't just ask that because I'm going. I actually was curious for others. But pulling back a little bit, in case it isn't obvious, you recently you had a trip to Disneyland, which we'll talk about in a minute, and Universal Studios Hollywood. So overall, though, with the Super Nintendo world, beyond just the Mario Kart, which I know in California is a bigger deal even because it's the only ride, though I know there's more things. Yep. But what did you think of Super Nintendo World overall beyond that? Because it looks pretty cool.
Amazing. Yeah, I put a comment out there right as we walked through the warp tunnel for the first time that it's arguably, in my opinion, the best reveal of a land out there. You go through that warp tunnel and then everything is just so tall that you feel immersed in the land. I will say it is small and it is tight. And when it's busy, you can tell. That's just the land and the space that they had to work with out there, unfortunately. I believe the land is much larger. That's going to be in that mysterious theme park that's supposedly being built in Orlando. And so hopefully they give it a lot more space. There's the 2 levels of the one in Orlando that they're building that you just don't really have that much access to in Hollywood. But the set design, the piranha plants blew me away. I mean, just the size of everything and the constant animation that's going around you at all times makes you feel like you are in Super Mario World. You feel like you are there. You are transported to that land. So kudos to them on everything. And that goes into Mario Kart. Like, for me, the ride would have been better just as a simple dark ride. The sets are really cool. The augmented reality, though, you're focused so in on these animated characters in front of you that aren't actually really there that you don't pay attention to these scenes and what they designed in the ride around it. I would love to go back, and I only got to ride it once because the line is 4 hours long when you're out there. Dan, 4 hours, get ready. It's not worth the 4-hour wait to me. Now, they do sell that pass that's like $20 a person early in the morning. You have early entry and you have access to it. Do that. Please do that. And I think you'll walk away going, oh, this was a better ride. But I walked away with it going, this is a 45-minute wait at most, in the future. I can skip it. But I think I would like to ride it again. I didn't get to do this and take the glasses off and just experience it like a Fantasyland dark ride. I think I would like that a lot better than what I got because they did not spare any money whatsoever in designing the land. That they put a huge amount of money into it, and you can tell there's money everywhere around you, including the gold coins with the fun games that everybody gets. They're running around with the power bands and playing. So they did a great job with the land.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I was looking at it today, actually. I was thinking, because that's my only concern really about Universal Studios Hollywood, I actually have not been to since I was a kid, which was like 1985. So I think there's not a lot of A-Team going on or Conan the Barbarian anymore there like there was then. But I was looking at that early access, and it's for the day we're going, it's like $20 a person, which... I'll pay that to go on Radiator Springs Racers. I'm going to pay. So, yep. And my family's not really early risers, but I'm like, we're going to do it that day. I think we're going to do it.
I've read a few. We didn't get to do it because we were there weeks after it opened, and we had planned on doing that. And, my idiot planner self just, assuming I could get it like the day before or whatever. No, it's sold out like crazy. So if you have it now, if it's available now, after we're done recording, I encourage you to go purchase it and just have it ready because it will sell out. But the reviews that I've read of some people who have done it, that they're making comments that they got to play all of the games, including to do all 3 challenges and go into Bowser Jr. and do that challenge, as well as ride the ride 2 to 3 times within that hour. So it's not an oversold event. It does come off that it's a really limited group that gets to go in there. So yeah, anybody that's listening, and including the host of this show, go make that purchase. If it's that important to you to go do Mario Kart and Super Nintendo World, it's worth every penny. It's $20 to be able to do that ride 2 or 3 times, and that's nothing
They
at all.
could charge 50, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll probably do that. So not
Dan, they might be listening. Stop, Dan. They might be listening.
Well,
20 is his max.
Not to talk too much about my trip, but I will say, if anyone's listening and you're going right now, when I checked today, basically all of April was sold out, but May and June was wide open. So, so I think that, and we're going in early June, so I think I am going to buy it soon because it's going to go fast. But overall, before we move on to Disneyland, just in general, what were other highlights of Universal Studios Hollywood that you think, are beyond Nintendo, people should definitely see?
Well, my listeners on Marty Called had made fun of me quite a bit within our show group chat that I didn't express my desire to do the tram tour enough. I love the tram tour. I think it's up there with the absolute top theme park attractions in the world. And yes, there's nothing more than you sitting on a tram and going around, but this thing's an hour long. You do multiple attractions on it at one time. If you love classic Universal, things like Jaws, things like Earthquake, it's there. This is one of those things that you feel your childhood just going through you when you're riding it. Plus, you're on movie sets. You're seeing stuff shot. When we were there, they were filming American Ninja Warrior on the back lot, and you got to see the set. Stuff that you're going to watch later this summer. And to me, that's cool, which gets into our conversation in just a little bit. But my daughter loved it, and like she's a huge Jordan Peele fan. She loves. I'm a fantastic parent, letting my 11-year-old get caught up in the world of Jordan Peele horror films. But his production set is on that lot, and they added the sets to the movie Nope on there, and they were filming down Residential Street. We couldn't go down Residential Street where Wisteria Lane is from Desperate Housewives, and the several the Munsters house. Couldn't go down there because it was a hot set during that time, and they were like, it's a super secret top film Universal shooting right now. We can't even tell you anything about it other than we understand it's a Christmas movie. And 2 days after we got back from our trip, we find out that Jordan Peele's next movie comes out on Christmas Day 2024. He works on that lot, and we're going, did we just maybe see, even if it was just wires and cables and boxes, were we right next to possibly his next big Christmas horror? We don't know. You don't know. But that's the fun part about that ride is you don't know who you're going to see. Celebrities walk that lot. You might come across a celebrity that's there at that time. You might see sets of your favorite show. You also get to ride multiple attractions. And I said it on the show, it's my favorite thing in the world. You can go buy a beer before you get on this ride and drink a beer while you're riding rides. It doesn't get any better than that. I'm serious.
I heard you say that, and I was like, mental note. Gonna add this to the list.
Yes, get you a beer before you go on. It is an hour long though, so make sure you go to the restroom.
Can't do that
before
on
you get on the ride.
Safaris.
No. But the tram tour is a highlight, and then the Secret Life of Pets is an absolute highlight. Like, there is no better dark ride anywhere right now, which makes me think a little bit about Mario Kart. Like, if you look at the top lot, you pulled off this amazing dark ride. If you wanted to do a dark ride, it's right there. I can't speak enough about how cool Secret Life of Pets is. From the queue to the ride, it's something that you've never seen before. Having a queue where you're so close in proximity of audio animatronics. There's no back and forth switchback system. You're actually going through people's apartments. People are sitting on the couches or sitting on the couch. It's so silly, but you feel like you're in a New York, lofts that you're going through one after another. And then the ride itself is just super top notch. So they have a new kids theme park opening down the street here in Texas that we're looking forward to in a few years. We know there's new stuff coming to Kids Zone in Orlando. You also have Epic Universe. If this is the direction they're going with their dark rides, Disney probably needs to step their game up because they realize this is stuff that people really enjoy. And that thing had an hour to 2 hour wait all day long, and it's been open for a year. And honestly, it's worth it. Like, that's one that I would sit there and go, I have to do this ride. So they've stepped their game way up, man. I have no problem giving Universal the respect and kudos that they deserve. And right now they're hitting on a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, actually the tram tour I did do when I was a kid, but it was like the parting of the Red Sea and all these, like, the broken bridge. But some of the things, Battlestar Galactica was there. No, but some of the things are the same. Yep. And I went to Universal Florida early on and did like Confrontation and Earthquake. And so it's fun to see all those still there. But I know you also went to Disneyland. and got to go to Avengers Campus. And I know we could go through all elements of Disneyland, but I want to save it for your Marty Called show. But real quickly, what did you think about Avengers Campus and about Web Slingers in general? Because I have not been there yet, but again, we'll be going soon.
So Avengers Campus, honestly, a little underwhelmed with the layout and the buildings and the architecture and the design. It's very minimalistic, to be honest. It looks like warehouses. It looks like, they do have the Avengers, I guess, base, for a better sense of a word, that the Quinjet's on top that's just not fully fleshed out at the moment. That's pretty cool. There's some scenes there, but like the PIMS test kitchen, the building itself, not that great. I love Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, but people have critiqued that building for years, the way it looks on the outside. And same with Web Slingers. Like, it's just pretty underwhelming as you enter that land, completely opposite of Super Nintendo, where it's amazing. Avengers Campus, you have to kind of understand, like, where am I at this point? It doesn't just scream, hey, you're in a comic book world at the moment. But Web Slingers was another one that I criticized quite a bit on Marty Called after watching the YouTube videos. That one completely surprised me. I absolutely loved Web Slingers. And we ended up doing that one 4 or 5 times over 3 days. We loved it. We liked Toy Story Mania, but not like, it's not an absolute must do for us on every trip. This one, though, being the next technology, the next step in that technology, really feels like you're in that experience and you're shooting those webs, and the first time you go through it is another one of those where, like, kind of like, what am I doing? And by the end of it, you actually understand, if I do certain motions with my hands, it does different things. And at that point, you're like, I got to go do this again. And you go do it that second time, and you're getting better, and you're pulling levers, and you're blowing up multiple, spider bots at one time. And by the end, you're like, oh, I just realized I can do this. And you've got to go back in line and go do it all over again. And then we see the kids with the little attachments that you can, shoot, be like Iron Man. And they had Black Panther ones now, and they had Doctor Strange. And again, when those first came out, I was like, I would never buy those power up. Like, it's just a cheap way to get a few more bucks out of my pocket. No, I've sat here with my kids, and like, next time we go, I'm getting, I want the Doctor Strange one. The other kids want this and that. Like, we plan on buying them because we plan on riding the thing over and over again. We loved it. Absolutely loved it. It is screen based, which, that's a little disappointing that it's so much screens on there. But once I realized what they were kind of getting at and how they did it, the animation is stunning. The gameplay is awesome. Like, it doesn't, some of those rides kind of feel like it's just kind of repetitive. Right. And like, what are my actions, if they really are making a difference with what's going on here? And this does. Like, what you do does have a direct effect. It's not just reserving you the same animations over and over again. So I loved it. Quickly, I'm sure we'll talk about it on Marty Called, like, walking off that technology, knowing they can't put Spider-Man in those parks. My brain was just spinning, like, how can they get this in Orlando? Like, this needs to be in Orlando, whether it's Marvel based, whether, can they put a Doctor Strange ride in? I don't know. This is the one I would tell, because you could do the same thing with, instead of shooting webs, you could be doing spells and easily work a storyline around that. But maybe there's another IP that can work around it. But the ride and the gameplay is so good that it needs to find its way into other parks.
Interesting. I've heard a lot of people say that they enjoyed it more than they thought, but maybe not raving as much. Well, they got that Wonders of Life area over there. Interesting. Mm-hmm. That would work. And, me being old school Epcot, but I'm like, well, Cosmic Rewind's already there. I'd rather they put something in that building, do something there.
That time's passed, Dan. It's over. Over. I have to tell Josh and Tim that all the time. Like, it's time to just bite down and go, how can we just make this the best park it can be? Because the old days are gone.
Speaking of old days, well, we... last time you were on, we went through what I thought was enjoyable. The Disney MGM Studios, we talked about opening day attractions. And, a lot of it is, you and I went to the Disney MGM Studios a lot when we were younger. A lot of people didn't. And so it's kind of fun, not that we're trying to educate, because, you can only go so much on podcasts, but it's fun to kind of go through these earlier attractions, because I feel like, we talked about just things that were there opening day, fairly limited amount of things. But pretty quickly after that, when they realized, okay, the idea of this being this half-day park, everyone's like, no, we want to stay all day. They had to add a bunch of things. Now, some were good, some were not as great. But so what we're going to do today is go through some attractions that kind of came, it's a pretty broad range. We have ones opening pretty much up into the early to mid 2000s, but a lot of things that opened 1990, 91, all that. And we're just going to talk about some of these because there's the ones that everyone knows, Star Tours, but then there's a lot of ones it's like, really? Like me, I was on YouTube today like, what? That was there? So, it's crazy.
This park leads itself to that, especially those early days. as they quickly were trying to appease the large crowds that were coming in. And, you can't build a ride overnight. So sometimes you just got to throw something together and hope it works. And honestly, I was looking through your list and like, there are still holes in here of things that we won't talk about tonight that people would just be like, why was that there? And it was there. And a lot of times these things were there for a good amount of time. It's just they were just finding ways to help kill the crowds around the larger attractions that were already having 2+ hour waits. They needed to move those people around.
Yeah, by no means is this a comprehensive list, even from that era, because if you really were going to go through like all the different shows that were in, even before Beauty and the Beast, that were in that theater, or there's a really weird show from 1989 that I've seen a video of. But just in general, there's a lot of things. But we're kind of hitting on highlights and then kind of the next grouping of things that, some were there a year, some were there. I can't believe how long some of these attractions were there. But so we're going to start with an easy one, which is Star Tours, which I think of any of these people, even if you haven't ridden it, know about the original Star Tours. I mean, DJ Rex is still at Oga's and everything else. So I don't know how much time we'll spend on this, but I'm curious, for me, the first one I went on of Star Tours was at the studios. I didn't get to Disneyland in the late 80s when it was there. So for me, this was the first time. And I'm curious for you, like, your initial experiences riding this, because this simulator attraction, I know they had Body Wars, but still was a fairly new thing. What that was like for you, kind of starting off and the interest level.
Never been on it. I'm kidding, Dan. I'm done.
The podcast is over. I'm calling Tim Grassi now.
Oh, God. We had a 3-hour review on Star Tours, but no. So when this first came out, and I was born in 79, so I grew up with my life revolved around Star Wars. And so when this came out, believe it or not, I did not start riding roller coasters until I was nearly in high school. I did not like roller coasters at all. I had a bad experience with Space Mountain, my very first trip, like in 86 or so, we're in there. And it took me a long time to trust getting on one again. So these kind of rides I dug because, one, it was cool, and two, it wasn't a roller coaster. So this was kind of my out. Like, I want to ride that again and again and again. And even when it had just the one film, I couldn't get enough of it. It was classic Star Wars. Even from the outside, like there's not many rides that I wanted to wait in queues except for this one. I wanted to walk under the Ewok Village. I wanted to spend time listening to R2-D2 and C-3PO talk about, the repairs on the Star Speeder. I wanted to do all of that stuff. This was the one thing I did not want to blitz through. I wanted to take it all in. So from doing that and then getting on the ride, I mean, we say it all the time, and we'll say it more, as we talk about any of these things built around a film franchise. But this was Star Wars. Like, you were in a Star Wars movie. This to me is I don't know if officially it's canon, but to me, this is canon. Like, this is part of that Star Wars universe. So from the first time I was on it, it was just like, it was one of the things there that it was like multiple times per day, per trip. We did it over and over. And luckily I had a family who loved it as well. So it wasn't very hard to convince them. Body Wars, that was a different convincing there. That one made us all a little queasy when we got off. But this one, no, we dug it. We loved it. And, even to this day, even with the news that came out a couple of days ago about new films coming in 2024, like my daughters love it. And I told them about it. And they're like, why can't it be tomorrow? I was like, well, it takes them a little while to, animate the stuff and program the ride. But they're excited about it. They've done just a great job of making this such a re-rideable experience with the same old technology. Like, this ride system has been around forever. This ride system's been in your malls in the late 80s. It's so simple, but it's still so good and effective. So it's high on the list of our favorite attractions.
Oh, yeah. And I mentioned, I would do the Disney roller coasters when I was young. But for some reason, yeah, for me too, it was like Six Flags. I was like, oh no. But these,
nope.
Yeah, these sometimes freak me out even more. Not Star Tours, because again, it's like, for some reason, Body Wars, like I said, I was like, man, I got a headache after that or whatever. And then you're like, Star Wars, like, oh, we're in Star Wars. It's great. It's like the same ride system. I don't understand. I mean, it's because like you're in the brain and the lungs and you're kind of like, do I really want to know what the inside of? No, I don't really want.
This is one that if you want to get freaked out, back when I worked at Muppet Vision 3D, we kind of shared crews with Star Tours. So it was not you would go into work and they're like, we're short staffed at Star Tours. Can you go work greeter? Can you go work a simple position over there? And we would swap out. So I did that a few times. If you want to get freaked out, go into one of those bays where the simulator's at. When you're walking across that bridge, it doesn't feel very big in there because it's so dark. Walk in there with the lights on and see how high up you are in the air, and then watch one of those simulators, and we call them the elephant legs. See how far you're actually leaning forward and how far back you are and tilting from side to side. It will make you think twice about that ride. It's incredibly impressive. I know there's on the Disney Plus series, I'm gone blank on the name, but there's the episode about Star Tours.
Right, behind the attractions.
Watch that episode, Behind the Attractions. You get a few glimpses of that room, but being in that bay and watching one of those go through a whole sequence, it's ridiculously cool. And yeah, it makes you a little motion sick just watching that by itself. But they do a great job of disguising how large each one of those rooms actually are.
Yeah, before we continue, I did want to mention that announcement. Scott Trowbridge, of course, he gets up there and he's like, I can't tell you where it is. I can't tell you anything. It's something that hasn't been shown. And I'm like, okay, is it High Republic with the Acolyte stuff? Is it Ahsoka, which is my guess? What else is coming out? It's not going to be the kids' shows. It's weird, and that panel was kind of boring because they were just saying the usual. They're really trying to sell the Galactic Star Cruiser, and then they threw that in. But I love the idea overall that they are still updating it. Like even the last time we went, it was like Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and Grand Rise of Skywalker or whatever. But, seeing the shot with all the the Star Destroyers is still pretty cool on that. And the fact that they're updating it, I remember when it came out at first, I was at Disneyland one day solo, and I was like, this is the chance, and rode it like 8 times because nobody's going to tell me I can't. And I kept getting the same stupid Naboo every time. But regardless, because of that, though, I love the original, and I would have ridden it a lot. I don't know if I would have ridden it that many times. So I think it's cool that they took what was very revolutionary and innovative at the time and actually, which they always say they're going to do and never do, like Toy Story Mania or even so far Smuggler's Run, and actually updated it frequently, which is awesome.
Yeah, and this is the low-hanging fruit, I think, when it comes to all of the new content that Disney is putting out with Star Wars. And they painted themselves in such a hole with Galaxy's Edge on what they can and can't add there. This is the place to add scenes from The Mandalorian, from any of these series coming up. It's perfect. You hit the nail on the head that it's the scenes they're adding are definitely from these that we just haven't seen yet. And it'll be interesting what they do there and what characters they add. And this is the easy way to put those characters in the park and put them in pretty quickly, honestly, compared to what they would have to do to do something big in Galaxy's Edge. So I was in California when they did. I was there during the Food and Wine Fest, and they did put in the old Soarin' Over California in for a month, which was really cool to do.
I love Soarin' Over California.
I do too. Love it. Which makes me go, and I know Rex is the pilot on the original, and we have C-3PO now, but I wish there was some way that every once in a while, it's just that super bonus version of the ride that every once in a while you will get the classic Star Tours film. I would love to do that every once in a while, as much as I love the randomization that goes on now and the new technology and how clean it looks. At the 3D on it is fantastic. I do miss that old film and wish they could do it every once in a while.
They should do that for a special event. I mean, they're already bringing back Hyperspace Mountain again in May, which is what's going to be there when I go. I've never done that. You could just do like one of they have all those theme nights at Disneyland. Say, tonight is original, we're going to do the original Star Tours. People would lose their mind.
Yep, they would. They would.
They're just printing money. I don't know what you can charge. Bring some weird characters in, have dance party, whatever. It would be like a little Star Wars weekends. But I want to make sure we move on, though, because there's more to cover. To the second biggest thing ever, of course, Dick Tracy Diamond Double Cross. Which I didn't know existed. I had no idea. Apparently, and here's the crazy thing about this. This is a stage show which played at the Theater of the Stars, which is the Beauty and the Beast Theater, May 1990 to February 91. But the weird thing is, it came out before the movie. The movie came out in like June. It was like It's Tough to Be a Bug setup, kind of, but even more so. And they didn't even have the full script from what I've read, I mean, online, take it with a grain of salt. What I read, they were using like an early script when they developed the show. So the show is kind of weird and doesn't make much sense. I never saw this in person, but it's one of those things. I think overall, too, Disney really thought, Dick Tracy, this is going to be our big hit. And it made some money, but they spent so much on it, and then it didn't really happen. But I don't know if you have experience with this, or, also they had other things like Dick Tracy on the Backlot Tour for a short time. But there's a lot of things there they were doing, and I missed out on most of this because, I saw Dick Tracy maybe at home after or something, but was not really, as like a 14-year-old just zoned in on Dick Tracy at the time.
I get to geek out here a little bit for you. I love Dick Tracy, the movie. Now, there's many factors behind that. Part of it is what they did in the parks. But also my family was in the McDonald's business growing up. I lived a life where my breakfast, lunch, and dinner were Happy Meals and, hot cakes and sausage and Egg McMuffins. So part of the push for Dick Tracy was a massive, massive McDonald's campaign on top of it. So, for the longest time in the stores when I would go in with my dad, it was Dick Tracy this, Dick Tracy that. They had a scratch-off game. They had the Happy Meal toys. They had glasses. They had all kinds of stuff. So I was looking forward to the movie like crazy. And then go and see this in the parks. And it's the weirdest thing in the world. Go if you want some nightmares, go look at the walk-around characters that they used in this and the face characters. It's crazy. I have, and I'll do this for you next time because they're in the attic somewhere. They sold 12-inch Dick Tracy dolls in the Studios park. And there was like a set of 6 of them, and they were like $30 a piece. These things were not cheap. I have all of them. I bought everything I could Dick Tracy. I was obsessed with that movie, obsessed with the show. Still, like, my biggest regret or miss in Imagineering history is not getting the Dick Tracy Crime Stoppers attraction that was on the books.
Yeah.
And it's great that they didn't do any of this stuff because it would have lasted literally like a year, and then they would have been like, how do we replace this? So there's a part of me that hates everybody for not seeing that movie and making this the massive franchise that it deserved to be. This is one of those things that is just like, who designed this? Who put this together? Who designed those characters? I would love to have been in that Imagineering room when this was being pitched and they just showed everything, and then for Eisner to go, that's it. Let's do it. Let's go. So
I'm sold. I'm got a winner.
Let's do it.
Which is what everything I've heard that was what it'd be. It'd be like, I want Dick Tracy Hollywood, because like the show is like, it almost feels, it's like, this is very common early MGM Studios.
Yep.
Lots of like shows that feel like big Broadway productions, or I don't know if I'd say that far, but big like show tunes numbers, and there's everyone's dancing and singing like the old Hollywood, and that's what this show was. But then you mentioned the Crime Stoppers. I believe they were also trying to develop that with like that Indiana Jones ride system, which again, Indiana Jones didn't open till, several years later, like 95 or something, but they were developing it at that time. And that would have been really interesting. I mean, one, it would have been fun to ride, but to have that, and then you go, okay, let's just put Indiana Jones in. We can't use Dick Tracy anymore. I mean, what would they have done? That ride system's so expensive.
Yep.
I mean, it was a weird time because that was, after Paris opened. They might have just been like, let's just leave in Dick Tracy for 10 years. I don't know, but it would have been cool.
Yeah, the concept art from that it just breaks my heart looking at that, because the concept art is really, really cool. Now, again, like, because you were going to have a Tommy gun. Like, you were shooting with it as well. Like, I don't know how long that would have gone.
Not now.
No, not now. But even this was one that is not on the list here. But they were so all in on Dick Tracy, where the Starbucks is now. Before you take a right onto Sunset Boulevard, that was a store before, and half of that store was a soundstage that they would pick people out of the crowd. This was something that they did every like 30 minutes, and they would cast a Dick Tracy show. And it was filmed in there, and there was somebody who would be Dick Tracy. It was always kids. It was you were going to be Dick Tracy. You were Tess Trueheart. I know way too many of these names. I'll keep going. Somebody was Big Boy. Somebody was Flat Top. I'm telling you, I'm obsessed with this movie. I love all of it. But you would film it, and you had a director, and you had a producer, and it was all kind of improv. They would go through the story, and you would do like a little 10-minute deal, and then they would record it, and you could buy the VHS tape. And me and my sisters did it like 3 or 4 times. I swear to God, I've torn my parents' house apart trying to find these tapes. If I ever do, I will put it on YouTube and I'll send you and your listeners the first link to it. But it was another, like, they devoted a whole half of that Starbucks building to Dick Tracy and this whole, creating a Dick Tracy movie that you could be part of the experience and buy the tape for $30 a piece afterwards and take it home with you. So they were so all in on that concept and swing and a miss afterwards.
I had no idea you were that into Dick Tracy when I set this up.
Nobody did.
How many? So you said you have all the dolls. How many were there?
I believe the ones that were sold in the park was 6 of them. It was
6.
Yeah,
okay.
Dick and like 4 of the villains and Tess. No, I'm sorry, not Tess. It was Madonna's character, the blank. I know too much. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Spoiler alert. Madonna's character is the blank. If you've not seen Dick Tracy, I apologize that I just spoiled that. Like, the main villain ends up being the girl he was in love with the whole time. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Of course. That's always how it works. It's just every film noir movie ever. Same thing. Okay. Well, let's move on. I don't know how to segue out of that.
We'll do a Dick Tracy episode later. We'll go in tonight.
There's so many. Okay. So why haven't they done that on Retro Disney World yet? They could bring you in and just do a whole episode on Dick Tracy. I don't know. All right, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set adventure is the next thing we're going to talk about, which was there so long. I always thought of this as an opening day attraction, but it actually opened December of 1990. One reason being that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie only came out like 6 months before that, or a little bit before. It wasn't that much longer. Essentially, that was there up until they started closing things for Galaxy's Edge in 2016. Several things like that. But I don't remember in my head going there as a kid that often. I remember going there a little bit older and being like, this is so weird, and like sliding down the tongue and all the weird things they had there. But as a kid yourself, did you, well, again, you wouldn't have been that young either because 79, but did you spend much time in this Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playground area?
Absolutely. So I'm the oldest of my 3 siblings. So I do have 2 younger sisters. One's 5 years younger than me. So that helps a lot with the playgrounds and stuff. Like, this was right up her alley going there. But so I'll lie and say she was the reason we spent a lot of time in there. But I loved it. Yeah, it was so much fun. This is actually the opposite of Dick Tracy, though, where they were thinking Dick Tracy was going to be a huge hit. So how do we get stuff in early before the film? They were caught off guard with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and how huge of a hit that was. And they were figuring out, like, what can we do? A playground was pretty simple, pretty fast, and pretty easy to put into that park. And so I loved it. There were so many fun things in there. Now, the one thing I do remember is, like, we would go during the summers while school was off. So I do just remember how insanely hot that area could be and burning yourself as you're going down the slide out of the Kodak film dispenser. But you would always go try to find the dog's nose, though, that would sneeze a little water mist out of it to cool you off some. It was a blast. I loved it. Now, I do know, again, when I worked at Muppets, and that was another kind of shared area, that was like the last place you ever wanted to work and get a shift was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playground. So I luckily never had to go work over there and experience like an 8-hour shift in the sun and just melting away on that dark ground, because of course it had to be dirt. So it had to be like a black, brown ground everywhere, just absorbing that Florida heat on you. And I'm not a big fan of the playgrounds, like the boneyard and stuff. Looking like those things, if that were to go away tomorrow, I wouldn't care. But when this went away, it did hurt a little bit when this one went, because it was just such an iconic. It's hard to say that a playground is an iconic attraction for a park, but this really was pretty iconic for that park.
Well, I think it's because they went beyond just what you expect when you hear that, movie set adventure, but still it was a playground, but it kind of looked cool and everything was really big. And I mean, obviously like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Whereas, I mean, you think about a place, that's warm, like the Boneyard, where I'm just like, could anything, and that park's already warm, but could anything in this world be hotter than this spot? And sometimes I've been there in March. I'm like, how would this place be in July or something? But essentially that's kind of how it felt. But still, I think like a lot of things, even though they did it quickly, they tried to, because they were so focused on the movies and the behind the scenes and all that, it was not just like, you've seen more recently when they didn't have enough things to do and they had people like playing with hula hoops and all that weird stuff. This wasn't that. This was a cool place for kids. I'm not saying I wish they would do a bunch of playgrounds now, but I do like the idea of putting something up for a movie quickly.
Mhm.
Because now I feel like if they wanted to do this, it might take them 3 years before they figured out if the movie was good or not. And this, even though you said they were blindsided, it still came out pretty quickly after the movie.
Yeah, that was the impressive part of how fast they got this up and done so well. And you know, between like the Boneyard, and then you got the trail over at California Adventure. That any kind of those things that they put in now, they do look like a playground. It does look like a playground. This did not look like a playground at all. This looked, as you walk in, you just have those tall blades of grass, and the slide is hitting. Like I said, the little Kodak film roll. That was the slide. It doesn't look like stairs to go up there. Like it was, everything was disguised. Like you really felt like you were on the set of a movie, as opposed to being on a playground that's kind of disguised as a set of a movie. For as fast as this went in, the amount of attention to detail that they put into it was kind of the amazing part about it.
For sure. Well, I want to make sure we have time to talk about the next related things, which are 2 shows. Mostly we'll talk about the first one, but then there's 2 that both played for quite a while relating to the Muppets. The first one is Here Comes the Muppets, which I watched today on YouTube, which only played for about a year. It was in the theater that until recently held Voyage, the Little Mermaid. And essentially, trying to think of how to describe this. It's like a variety show where Kermit's for a while is talking to people on video phones and stuff, but then eventually Electric Mayhem comes out and sings Heart of Rock and Roll by Huey Lewis, and then they do Shout, but it's kind of the typical Muppets type thing, Fozzie tell jokes and all that. Do you have any history? Do you remember seeing this? Because it was only there a year.
This is my blind spot on your list. I do not remember this at all. I don't think I ever did this. I think this one only lives in my mind through YouTube. And it's a weird show.
They look weird too.
This is during the weird phase that the Muppets were full-size characters. This was not your regular Muppets, even that as you experience them in Muppet Vision 3D, where Bean Bunny is tiny, the size of Bean Bunny. Waldorf and Statler are the size that we see them from the shows. These were your goofy walk-around character size version of Fozzie Bear. Like these were large walk-around characters. And for both shows, they did this, and it just came off odd, very strange to see Muppets that large. I will say the cool thing about this, that anybody can pull this up on YouTube. They do not need to watch the whole show, but when the monorail crashes through the wall, that was the cool part of this deal, which I believe is actually it's one of the effects that they still use for Voyage of the Little Mermaid when that show walks up.
I'm not sure.
It's either
I haven't watched that.
Yeah, there's if this is true, I'm a genius. If not, this never came up on the show. But I believe like the track system that thing would roll the monorail out is like one of those. I don't think it's for Ursula, but it might have been for the Rock that she comes out. There's something that they still use that technology within that building. But yeah, this was an absolute blind spot, and it's not on many people's all-time favorite list, so I think they did a good job switching from this over to Voyage of the Little Mermaid.
Kermit looks weird, but Fozzie looks very strangely shaped, I have to say. A lot of people aren't in it very long, but when they're on stage telling jokes, and all I kept looking at going like, and this is YouTube again, but there are decent quality videos, surprisingly enough. And I was like, what is going on? Well, let's move on to the next show, which actually played on the Streets of America area, Muppets on Location, Days of Swine and Roses. This premiered in 1991. It was about 2.5 years through January 94. Pretty long show, like 20-something minutes. But do you have much background with this one?
Outside of seeing it, no. And again, I love the Muppets. I love where I eventually worked. I love Muppet Vision 3D. I hope that thing never goes away. But this one, again, is another one where you can clearly see, and I just remember it was a time killer. It was, we have an open space back here. They've used that space for a ton of things. This is where, the Power Rangers used to show up. This is anything that could shoehorn in somebody quickly to pull people away, they did. And again, a 20-minute show like on the Streets of America in an uncovered spot just was screamed hot and brutal and sweaty and not something that you want to stand around for very long. So I have gone back in time and revisited that show. It's nothing to write home about. It's nothing to miss. But again, the use of the large characters is just offsetting for me. We grew up with the Muppets being a certain size. that's just what they are. And so when you try to switch it over to something in a park setting like this, it did not work in a theater setting, and it did not work on the streets of America. And then they finally got it right when they shipped the Muppets over to Muppet Vision.
Muppet Vision got so many things right, and I hope it stays because you always hear, you were talking about it on your last Marty Called show. I mean, not wanting it to happen, but with Galaxy's Edge right there, and you hear it pretty often for people that don't have the same love of Muppet Vision, that they're just like, why can't we just take that spot? It's like, and I'm over here going, why can't they make the land bigger? Something else. But the problem is the Muppets are great, but they still, they've tried to they're trying another new show coming up. I don't know. I feel like they just can't seem to hit it right. But regardless, it's cool that they had all these kind of odd shows and that they still live on YouTube, even if they're a little
It was also kind of crazy. Like they were so committed to those characters before they owned the rights to the characters. That was also kind of the crazy. Like they didn't need to do either one of these shows before they came up with I can't see Jim Henson thinking that either one of these ideas were a great idea. Now, the pitch meeting for Muppet Vision, I bet he's sitting there going, yes, can we start yesterday, start doing this?
Yeah, he was involved in that.
Yeah. So, again, it's interesting what the relationship was with the Henson Company at that time that would have brought those characters into the setting like this. And they obviously were biding their time for something better. And we eventually got there.
For sure. All right. Well, let's talk about one that most people probably know more, and that's Voyage of the Little Mermaid, which premiered in 92 and played all the way through, basically through the COVID shutdown, and didn't come back. And that building, I'm like, come on, guys, let's do something with it. But I'm okay with it. I mean, I can't believe it was there that long. My experience with it is that, it's fine. It's a decent show. I have found that sometimes I've had aerials that aren't great, don't know the lines that well, because that's the person that actually is singing. And that could take you out of the show. But I feel like this is kind of an earlier version of what they ultimately did with like Finding Nemo the musical and some of the other things that got better. But so it was one that we didn't go to that much in its later life. But I don't know if this was something that you went to more or similar.
We went to it all the time. Again, having two younger sisters, that helps. But I got to admit, like, I was blown away the first time I saw the Under the Sea sequence with the puppets and the black lights and how they did that. And I wanted to go back over and over again to try to see how that was done. That just fantastic. And it's still to this day, when it's done right and when that room is lit the way it's supposed to be lit, it's insanely impressive still. And it's just a very simple technology and way they pull that off. So between that and we loved the water curtain. That was so cool. It was really cool. We'd always want to sit in those first 3 or 4 rows and get a little wet from the water curtain. Unfortunately, within the last couple of years, the water curtain stopped working, which if that's not working, that's one of those deals like when you work in the parks and you work on the ride, there's certain effects that if they don't work, you just shut the ride down for the whole day. And in my opinion, when that water curtain's not working, it's probably not worth running that show. Like, you're supposed to be under the sea. That gives you that feeling between that and the lasers that kind of shoot off the wall. Those are the two things that take you from sitting in a theater to living under the sea with Ariel and her friends. And it's a big part of that show, the way they use it in several sequences. So I hated it in later years that wasn't working. If it does come back online at some point, and I think the show is good enough to come back online at some point. It's been talked about for years, like this is a spot that can be renovated and done. Sure, if you want to make that Monstropolis and you need that room to do something and convert that whole animation courtyard into something bigger and better, I get it. But if you're not going to do that, this show still is really, really good, and it deserves to come back online and start having performances in the park again.
Well, especially with the new movie. And I mentioned my first question, but I'm thinking about it, that the new movie, which those live action movies, great or bad, always draw a lot of people. And I think this one especially, people are interested in more than some of the others. So I think maybe that's what they're waiting for. Because to me, I look at it too, that park, you need more things to do. So even if this show is, even if it's the same show, but the water curtain's working and everything, that might bring in however many people, 1,000 people, whatever, that then aren't just sitting around waiting for a lightning lane or something. So that's where, overall, that's one thing that I take as this whole thing for all of this, is some of these things are silly. Some are not great, some are great, whatever. Not these things. I don't think we want the Muppet shows that they had. But having more things that are entertainment or shows or things to do like this for people is what the park, and it also adds some kind of weird life to the park in a way where it's like personality to the park, which a lot of this stuff did. It wasn't the headliner, but they added some extra fun to it.
No, I agree. We've talked about, even with the new Little Mermaid, they are looking to get more representation into the parks and stuff. This is a fantastic opportunity to do that and revamp the show around the new version of this movie that is going to make a ton of money in the theaters. Yeah. I go back to I understand the new version of the park and what it's doing. It's getting away from the classic, the entertainment, the Hollywood glitz and glamour type stuff, but this is still the park where I think stage shows matter. Like this is where you can put IP anywhere you want and not have to worry about offending anybody with concepts. But this is also, live stage, live productions, even in something like this, is what this park is about. It doesn't all have to be Star Wars. It doesn't all have to be Toy Story. This can still have a nod and homage to entertainers and the actors and the music and everything that makes these films special. So I honestly hadn't really thought about revamping this attraction to the new version. It's a genius idea. That's what they should, and maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's why it has sat dark for so long. That would make sense.
Could be.
Because right now it's sitting there and not running does not make sense at all in a park that needs attractions at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it either until we were talking, and I went, that might actually work. Well, now we're going to talk about another attraction that I don't know if it needs to be back. And that Sounds Dangerous with Drew Carey from April 1999 through May 2012. Oh my gosh, that was 13 years. Because last time we did a show, we talked about the Monster Sound Show, which we both enjoy because it has the audience participation. They did something similar at the early Universal too, with Foley artists and everything else. Very fun. And then they came back. I mean, they did water that down eventually and had the ABC one, but it's still a similar idea. But then they come back and they have this show, which essentially is binaural audio, which they already had in their little room with the hair cutting, and also with Grandma Willow. They have one in Animal Kingdom. But they basically took this show and mostly just put you in the dark and did binaural audio. Now, I could be wrong, Ben. Tell me, is this another sleeper hit that you loved as a family?
Yes. Well, and it goes back. We loved Monster Sound Show. That was absolute top tier for my whole family. We thought it was hilarious every time we saw it. But part of it was the experience afterwards and going into those sound booths and doing the haircut. That was they always talk about, when you go on a Disney vacation, the things you come back and tell your friends about. And right up there next to a Space Mountain or any of the big e-ticket rides, we always, and especially my parents would go, they had this thing where we put our headphones on and it felt like it was cutting your hair and blowing the hair off. And so when they made a whole attraction around this, it was a no-brainer to go do. And we like Drew Carey. His comedy was always, we always watched that show every week growing up. And so for him to be in here, and I thought they pulled it off really well. The bees in the jar and the knives flying by your head. I really liked it. I'm sorry, I did.
That's okay. I feel like this is like we're working out where I'm setting you up. I'm going, wow, that was not great, and you're like, Dan, it was. And this is working, and it's not by design because there are some coming up that I enjoyed quite a bit. And again, I don't have anything against this ride. I feel like they use that well, but I always feel like you're in a big theater. Do something else that doesn't involve turning the lights out and using the audio. But the binaural audio was awesome.
And that was just something that you didn't experience a whole lot everywhere. So I totally get that. But this was a pretty cool, especially for the time that this opened, the technology was pretty darn cool. Now, where I tear this off a little bit so I just don't completely fanboy out. And for anybody who heard me on the first time that we went through this with the original attractions, this is my park. This is the park that I fell in love with. This is my favorite park anywhere. Still to this day, I love Disney's Hollywood Studios, but Disney MGM Studios and everything that it started with. I work in the television and film industry now because of this park. This set the stuff I was exposed to back then guided me into what I do now. So I love it takes a lot for me not to like something in this park, to be fair. But if I'm gonna tear it off, like comparing it to the Munster Sound Show, I greatly appreciated the Munster Sound Show way more than Sounds Dangerous. So if I had the choice between the two, that's the one I would have wanted to stay or figure out. But once they switched Munster Sound Show to the ABC, this is one that we kind of skipped a little bit. The ABC Saturday morning cartoon version of the Foley,
not as good,
not nearly as good at all. So going from that to this, I was okay with. And again, we enjoyed the heck out of it for quite a while. I do like how it started off though, where it was completely in the dark, but that freaked too many people out. So they added elements to where it wasn't completely in the dark the whole time. It's kind of like with Alien Encounter, like the original version of Encounter compared to the last version. This was on that same line where they actually had to bring the lights up several times so people would not just get totally freaked out by being in the dark and not knowing what was going on around them at all times. Because if you did not know what binaural audio was, it could really play some tricks with your mind. I could see how some guests could really get freaked out by is somebody touching me? Is something going on? So I appreciate it. I did dig it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I randomly did I think, because it was the exact window when they did it, the original Alien Encounter. And again, I didn't do each enough to be like, it was this, then this. But I remember coming out of that and being like, I can't believe that's a Walt Disney World. Because again, at the time, I mean, I know they had Alien and MGM and everything, but it was different. But all right, well, here's something I really enjoyed. Never was a contestant on it, but Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It. Millionaire was so big during this time.
Yep.
I mean, it opened in 2001, went for 5 years. And I know it got replaced by Toy Story Mania and everything else, but still, when I was sad when they closed this because I didn't go to Disney World as often in that time when I was college age, or actually it was a little after college. And but I really liked the way that they found they did a game show, but they found a way to get the audience involved and make it feel like the real show very well. I thought this was excellent, and the production values were higher than you might expect. And I know they've done that in other forms, like Let's Make a Deal, which I know we're not talking about today, but this was cool, I thought.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Let's Make a Deal because I was listening to the latest Disney Dish with Len Testa and Jim Hill, and that triggered a memory. I forgot about them doing, and we went to that several times where they filmed Let's Make a Deal in Studio One, but during those moments that they weren't filming it, they would bring, park guests in and 800 seats, and you would watch a fake episode of Let's Make a Deal. And we thought that was really, really cool. And so that was something my parents loved doing. And so we had fun doing that. So it's interesting how Studio One always kind of had that game show history behind it. So when Let's Make a Deal went in, yes, you hit it. Everybody was watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Everybody was watching that, and you couldn't get away from it ever. It was on every night. It was on much. And it was fun. It was great. And the thing I loved most about this is they did not go cheap on the set design. They put a ton of money into recreating the set for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And the interesting thing is this had to be 4 times the size of the normal set, because anybody who's been on a set for a regular television show, you'd be shocked how small those sets are. This was massive in there, and they moved so many people through. And that was the other thing I remember is how fast they would load you in there, get you out of there so they get the next group in. They were running this show so many times every day because it was so insanely popular. Which is, you don't remember that very often for, quote unquote stage shows in a theme park. Normally they're busy because they're running so few of them. This one, they had to run so many per day because the demand for it was so high. And just the quality of it when you went in was great. It felt like you were at a taping of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The hosts that would play Regis, I love that. They were so good with how they sat in that chair and just kind of ran the show. They were funny. They were engaging. They were great with another secret, pull the curtain back for television. Those people who get on those game shows are often cast in those spots. They're not just people they just randomly find and sit in that seat. So they usually have a personality. There's a reason they're engaging when you watch them on TV, because they're being cast in that spot. They were truly just pulling people out of the crowd based on the
Yeah,
fast
how
they would
quick you
answer.
were.
So you might get somebody up there who's just not going to be a very entertaining person that's in a very important spot in a show that's got hundreds of people watching. So the person who was sitting in that Regis chair had a very important job of moving that show along, making it fun, making it worth your while to wait for it, making it worth you burning a fast pass for. And I can't remember ever having a bad experience going to that show. It was always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember coming out of it and it's like, can we do that again?
Yeah.
I think my wife was like, no. But I was like, really, this is great. It's like one of the best things we did that day.
I always wanted that chair and just never got it.
No.
Man, that was so much fun.
Excellent. Well, a couple more we're going to do quickly. One of them is the Lights Motors Action Stunt Show, which many people listening have probably done because it's a little more recent. Opened in 2005 as part of the Disneyland's 50th anniversary, when different parks gifted attractions to others. Like this came from Disneyland Paris. I actually saw it in Disneyland Paris, basically the same show.
Yeah.
And then similar things like Soarin' went to Epcot, and there were others. But this arrived in 2005, went through again 2016 because of Galaxy's Edge. I love the Indiana Jones stunt show. We talked about this the last time. Just really like top notch. I haven't been to the Waterworld show at Universal, but I'm planning to go to that. That's one of the top things I want to do.
Yep.
But in general, I like stunt shows. This one I thought was good. I thought the stunts were amazing. I don't know. I'm curious for your thoughts. I think it's a very solid show. I thought the stunts were great. But I wouldn't say it's my favorite I've ever seen. But I thought it was pretty solid. And I know it always, especially early on, was drawing big crowds.
Yeah, I would say the first time I saw it, I was really impressed and thought it was a lot of fun. I've seen Waterworld. I've seen Indiana Jones. I would rank it below both of those. Waterworld is a must-do. Make sure you do that. This, to me, I liked it, but it had one major thing going against it, and it was that this was what effectively killed the Backlot Tour, which was one of my favorite things. Like, this is when they started cutting everything down. I know you would go through certain, but you lost Residential Street. Yeah. You lost certain things, and then that which made the choice of, killing Catastrophe Canyon for everything else eventually down the line. But this was the beginning of the end of the Backlot Tour as I knew it as a kid and just loved. So that always played a part in my enjoyment of like, do I like this compared to what we're losing? And I never liked it more than what we lost. It also, whoever put metal bleachers in Orlando that's the worst Imagineering decision in the history of Imagineering. Just the sitting in the hot bleachers in the sun always kind of killed it a little bit as well. So it's one I liked. I enjoyed it. It was fine. We didn't do it a ton. We would do it maybe once per trip. No. If we skipped it on a trip, it didn't bother me. And then when they announced it's going away, it was not one that I handcuffed myself to the queue railings outside. I was fine when it left. Sometimes you just need to change, but for what it was, for the time it was fine. And I did it in Paris as well, and it was, I'm happy we got something. I'm always happy when we get something new, but whatever.
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
When I was in Paris, it was 2006.
Yeah.
Before Crush, before Tower of Terror, even before Ratatouille. I'm like, what else are we going to do here?
Yeah.
We already did Rock and Roller Coaster, Cinemagique, which was awesome. But there wasn't much else. But here, it's like, yeah, I love the Backlot Tour, too. I know we talked about it. And this was kind of, this is, to me, almost embodies kind of the middle era, in a sense, where they're still doing things to teach about filmmaking, but it feels a bit different than what they were doing in kind of the earlier eras of the park.
Yeah, they kind of lost their identity during this time. They came out of it with a new identity, which is the direction that we've gone to today. But this was during that time period. They just didn't know what kind of park are we? Are we getting away from the film and production side? Or because this was still very much, if you saw the show, you were seeing how stunts were done. Like they pulled the curtain back. This is the stunt driver. This is how we would do it in a film. So they were still very much devoted to that. But you could kind of tell they were not for sure they were going to keep going in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. Well, speaking of kind of films and everything else, I'm going to combine this last one here. It's actually 3 exhibits if I really look at it, because there was a Journey into Narnia, creating the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Went for about a little over 2 years for that film. Then we had the Prince Caspian version. And actually, this space actually had a making of the Haunted Mansion set up before all this, but there's just not much info about that from the time period. The Haunted Mansion, Eddie Murphy movie, I'm speaking of. So, and then eventually, after Prince Caspian, they added in the one that people know the most, which actually is more recent, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, which was related to, I believe, the fourth Pirates film, if I remember correctly, or after the fourth, before the fifth kind of thing. And is known mostly for the really cool hologram, which kind of feels a bit like a precursor to, well, it actually came out after, but the idea, kind of like Forbidden Journey with Dumbledore and those characters, or even with the Christopher Walken at Disaster, there were a lot kind of like that. But I just, roping it all together, I mean, kind of the big question for this is, as someone who's so into movies, do these types of attractions, I mean, do you feel like they add much to like being a movie fan? Do you enjoy this type of walkthrough as opposed to some of the others? Was there still a lot you can enjoy with these types of behind the scenes? Because they're different than now where it's just like, here's a sneak peek, here's a 15-minute thing on a screen. This does give you some sets and some story to it.
Yeah, and going back in these rooms has always been the thing that I enjoyed the most, because this was part of the Backstage Pass tour. Used to go through these areas and used to utilize this, and then it went dormant for years. So to see them put something back in, just so I could step foot back in, was always exciting for me. And we did the Narnia one once or twice, which had a really cool effect of when you go through the wardrobe and then open up to that large room. That was really cool. It was a good way to promote a film and do it without just showing a movie trailer, kind of like you said, which they've gotten just way too used to doing over the years. Captain Jack Sparrow one I thought was really cool. I really did. And I think they should do this more even today, where if they have a new technology, this isn't the first time they've done something like this. I mean, I go back to where, there was a time when they were thinking of doing the VR Aladdin attraction, and at Epcot, they had it to where they were demoing it, and 4 or 5 people would get to sit down and do it. And I got to do that. And it was just a way of like, do we want to invest in this? They eventually do for Disney Quest, but not enough to put it into one of the parks. If they have a new technology that they want to try out without, putting it into an attraction to see if it works or not, and play test it, I would love to see more live play testing in the parks. And that's exactly what this was. I believe they looked at using some of this technology for some of the parks overseas that they ended up doing, the kind of Musion technology with Johnny Depp, his Jack Sparrow character on there. But, it also had projection mapping in there as well. If you held the key up and said take these bones to Davy Jones, as the skeletons were coming over the cliff to attack you, the kid held it up, and to send the bones to Davy Jones, and the projection mapping would go up in those. It would just completely change the room right in front of your eyes. And I just remember being completely blown away. That's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And now we see it in every attraction. We see it in every fireworks show. You see that technology, but that's where it started, was doing it in there, getting the reaction to the guests. You're also promoting a film. You're promoting a franchise. And it's in a space that just wasn't being used before. They don't do that enough to where they utilize spaces that are just underutilized at the moment. Whenever they put something in new, it's usually at the expense of something that's already there. There's enough area to kind of have some fun with this. I don't know if they would ever do it again. I think that time has maybe come and gone, but it does make sense. Like these little small shoulder attractions from time to time that maybe only have a 1 to 3 year shelf life, they do have value in a park that needs things to do. And it's a great way to see, hey, we've got this idea. Does it work? I'm sure I would love you to ask some of the Imagineers that you have on your show their thoughts, maybe specifically on this attraction, and if they should do more stuff like this to where they kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and test these things on guests. Because I'm sure the Imagineers sit out in Glendale and they see this stuff all the time. And they're, I don't want to say they're numb to it, but they probably see a lot of really cool things over and over again that maybe they don't get that full value right off the bat to where you can show it to a guest who's never seen anything like this before. If their eyes get big and wide and the gasp, they go, oh, we've got something here. We need to maybe put, whatever we're thinking to do with this on a bigger scale, we need to move forward with. So this is a really cool building. There's also been talk of black box attractions at some point. This was a black box building. This was something that they weren't intending anything to stay there very long. Put in something for a couple of years, take it out, convert it in days to the next thing, and then you have a brand new attraction for, a couple of years. So I like this, and I wish they would do it more.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you think about when Jack Sparrow closed. It's November 2014. They started they're working on Toy Story Land. They were getting ready to do Galaxy's Edge. It was really shifting. This is kind of one of the last, I mean, not that it was the same, but they're shifting towards we're going to build these lands and we're not going to focus as much on these secondary. And even you see like when they let Launch Bay just kind of sit there, and then they Little Mermaid hasn't reopened and things like that. Where I'm curious with this Avatar experience that they mentioned at Disneyland, because if I think of movies, like you have to have a movie that's big enough to do something like this. But if I think about a type of movie like that would be like, especially after how much money the latest Avatar movie made, something like that, where I'm curious if that, whether it'll be in the parks or at Down to Disney or whatever, if that's something like that where they could, because I think this is going to lead me into kind of a big question for you looking ahead, but because I look at this park and I say, headliners are great. I mean, sure, I'd love more headliners and all that, but Runaway Railway was better than I expected. Of course, Galaxy's Edge attractions are good, but if you guys do so much armchair imagineering on Marty Called podcast, and I haven't asked you this in advance, so this is just kind of off the top of your head, like what? Not as much like specific attractions, but if you're looking at this park, like we've pretty much talked about it. Most of the types of things we talked about are the types of things they're missing. But what could be done in a fairly short amount of time to really improve the experience for guests in this park?
Oh, wow. I thought we only had an hour here, Dan.
I put you on the spot here,
It's utilizing dead spaces at the moment. Like there's huge. They've done a really good job at this park of building out new lands. Galaxy's Edge is a blast. I love it. I really like Toy Story Land. I really do. But that all came again, we mentioned earlier, it came at the expense of Animation Courtyard, which is just, you go down to the end of, you go down to Runaway Railway, take a right, and there's just really nothing to do over there anymore. You have an empty theater. You have an animation building that is useless anymore behind Launch Bay. Launch Bay is a shell of itself. And now that they're bringing characters from the original trilogy somewhat from that timeline somewhat into Galaxy's Edge, with Mando and Grogu, and there's already talk of more characters coming up there. Like, do we need our own Darth Vader, Chewbacca like, do we, like, that space can be better utilized? Disney Junior, I get it, it's got a purpose for families, small kids, but I think those families with small kids would give that up for more attractions that are geared towards those kids. So they've got just a lot of space, and this on our show still infuriates us. I think we all, Tim and I are the two who rode Mickey's Runaway Railway. We like it a lot. Mm-hmm. It didn't need to come at the expense of the Great Movie Ride. You have all that, like the animation building itself. If you're not going to make new animated movies in there, guess what? It's about the size of Mickey's Runaway Railway. Like, you could have put it there. You could have kept the Great Movie Ride and then added a Mickey's Toontown area and really done something over there and put some kids' rides, because we don't really have the Toontown area anymore that we lost with Storybook Circus. You could recreate that whole deal kind of like the Disneyland version. It would fit in and work over there. They just need, it's too top heavy at the moment. The headliners are great, but the headliners have way too long of lines because there's not enough of those D, C, B ticket attractions to pull people away. And there's enough space to do those things that it just kind of blows my mind that they haven't, started to do anything. They've talked about Metropolis. Could you do an Incredibles land? Could you expand Pixar and do something over there? Could you, the indoor version of Radiator Springs Racers? There's stuff that is kind of low-hanging fruit that they could do pretty quick. How many years have we talked about the Monsters, Inc. Door roller coaster? Like, let's just do it. You've got the space to do it. Let's do it. We need to expand. We also need to connect Sunset Boulevard to that side of the park, because the flow of that park is still very off. There's plenty of stuff that they could do. They just need to commit to doing it. And I think this park, Animal Kingdom needs to be addressed next. There needs to be some expansion there, but
they need more rights.
Studios has to follow up real quick, because they have gotten the attention, but again, they haven't done enough on the other areas to pull away from those headliners that it can make that park a pretty miserable experience on a really busy day.
Yeah, and you find yourself walking back and forth and
Back and forth. Yep.
and it's
It is.
and it's just it's one of those where it's like it's not doing the World Showcase loop at Epcot. It's not that much walking, but it's kind of like this isn't that pleasant.
No.
It should be more pleasant. And but you mentioned Runaway Railway. I totally agree, and we've seen it at Disneyland, which they did a better job with the pre-show and with the whole setup because they were able to use a new building. And so and also the other thing you're seeing, my brother just went there, and I don't know if you had this experience, is they almost just walked on that ride because there's so many other things to do at Disneyland.
Yep.
And it's not that people don't like it. People really do. It's that when you have 50 attractions or something, but when you're in a park with 10,
Yep.
it's going to be more popular. So it's like, it's that same whole thing. It's similar with there's other attractions. For a while, Soarin' was that way, where in California it didn't have the same. I mean, I don't know if it's a totally great connection, but there are some attractions that are much more popular in one place versus the other. And it's not that they're that way. It's they need more things to do. So, and I know we could veer off and do an episode on this too, but I think it's an interesting idea and it does fit with what we've covered here. Well, I mentioned Marty Called and what you and Tim and Josh too sometimes are doing on that. I don't mean to not mention Josh. I just know he hasn't been on as much.
Josh wants to be a guest on your show in the worst way. So Tim and I keep kind of giving him a hard time about that. So the longer you can keep that from ever happening, it actually helps me and Tim. So just a heads up there. Yeah.
He's just got to pitch an idea. I'm like out of ideas. I've got,
We love Josh.
You know how it is.
We love Josh.
Yeah. My kids are 13 and 10, and yours are very similar ages. Some days you're just like, I don't have the energy for that. But, not to talk about me here, but why should listeners check out Marty Called? Like, what's so good about it? I know what's good about it, but what do you like about doing it?
I like we challenge each other. It's kind of a test amongst the three of us where we come up with an idea. It's usually a problem in the park or an issue in the park or an idea for a park. And then we don't talk about it amongst the three of us at all until we sit down and record. And we try to top each other's ideas. And Tim and Josh, I think, are very, very smart guys. I'm kind of the idiot of the show, the simple man, the common man. I'm the listener of the show where I deal with these two, a lawyer and an accountant, just very highbrow intellectual guys who can lose their keys in their parking lot and talk about it for 4 hours on a show. We won't get into that. But it tests us to see, we've all been theme park fans our entire life. So it lets us kind of put that hat on. If I was an Imagineer, how would I tackle this problem? We all have done our history and our research on the company and the people who have built what's already there. We love listening to shows like yours who talk, we all can just sit there and listen to an Imagineer talk all day about why he chose this color paint for the wall in the queue. Like, we dig that kind of stuff. It's awesome. So we like being able to put ourselves in those situations. How would we tackle an issue? How would we tackle a problem? And we seem to have listeners who enjoyed listening to it because we get all kinds of feedback on who has good ideas, who has bad ideas. And then we love to have the listeners kind of chime in on their own and say, what would you guys do? How would you come up with something better? So it's just a blast. We've been doing it for years now. It's always kind of fun when one of our ideas maybe somewhat kind of finds its way into a park and be like, it wasn't exactly it, but we were kind of thinking in that same direction as what they ended up doing. It's kind of fun to look at things years down the road after we discuss it on the show.
Well, excellent. I really enjoy it, and so I make a big pitch for it, even though, Tim's on it, and, but it's still great that you have such great ideas.
Thank you. The best ideas, right? The best ideas. Just stop right there. Just stop there. Don't need to say anymore.
Listen for Ben's great ideas. That is the pitch. All right. Well, Ben, this has been great. Time's flown by. Tons more we could cover, but this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
A blast as always. Can't wait to talk about more Hollywood studios down the line.
If you would like to check out other episodes with Skipper Ben, you should go to tomorrowsociety.com/podcast with an S at the end. This was Ben's 4th appearance on the show. He had 2 episodes where we dug into his time at Disney, his work on Muppet Vision, and as a Jungle Cruise skipper, so much more. And then the last episode was about Disney MGM Studios and was basically part 1 of what we did on this one. You You can also check out episodes with other podcasters, authors, filmmakers, and former Disney Imagineers who talk about what it was like to work behind the scenes on lots of cool attractions. If you would like to support this podcast, there's a really easy way you can do so through Patreon. You can make a small monthly contribution and get access to some really cool perks, including bonus podcast episodes. Learn more by going to patreon.com/tomorrowsociety. And you can also make a one-time contribution by buying me a Dole Whip. Go to tomorrowsociety.com/Dole Whip. Thanks to everyone who is a member of the Tomorrow Society, who has supported the show in any way, whether it's sharing it with your friends on social media, supporting through Patreon, or anything else. It makes a huge difference, and I really appreciate it. The music you are hearing right now was written by Adam Hookey and performed by the Sophisticated Babies. I also love hearing from you. You can email me, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. Follow me on Twitter @TomorrowSOC, Facebook or Instagram @TomorrowSociety. Thank you so much for listening to this show. I will talk to you again next time.